Okie dokie, we have yet another people's court and yet again another security deposit dispute. So let's see what happened and what's going on here.
This is the plaintiff, Tressa May Gillen Jr. She says she rented a guest house from the defendant's mother for 10 years. And when his mother became ill, he went on a crusade to get her evicted. He succeeded in getting her out, and now that his mother's passed away, he told her she was never going to see her blankety security deposit. Well, we'll see about that. She's suing for $1,954.02, the amount she's definitely due. This is the defendant, Stevens Parr. He says the plaintiff was going through a very nasty divorce from her husband, and the cops were called to the property numerous times. During that period, the woman stopped paying his mother's rent, so he stepped in because his mother felt unsafe being in the main house with a dangerous guy in the guest house. The plaintiff can show no proof she ever paid a security deposit, and proof is in the pudding. So no proof, no return of money.
I always wondered if the parties hear the narrator, because they always make facial expressions. I think they do hear them. I don't know why. I find it hilarious. Like someone should comment on his narration alone.
He's accused of taking on a tenant.
All parties, please raise your right hands.
Welcome back to the People's Court. Next case on the docket. The plaintiff rented the guest house of the defendant's mother for a decade. Says the defendant tried to evict her and tried to withhold her security. Now, the defendant says the plaintiff's estranged husband was going nuts. The police came. The defendant's mom didn't feel safe. It's the case of Don't Be My Guest.
Thank you, sir. Tressa May Gilliland?
Yes,
Junior?
I'm a junior.
There you go. You go. All right. That's the first time I've seen that. Versus Steve Parr and the estate of Penelope Parr. Okay, you are suing them because according to you, you are owed a security deposit plus interest and double the security deposit for not having received it back. And we're talking about something that happened how many years ago?
This happened 4.5 years ago.
Okay.
So the double security deposit must be wherever they're at. That might be the penalties. So penalties for not in good faith returning the security deposit or not doing good faith itemizations is usually penalty of 2-3 times the security deposit depending on where you're at. So I wonder if that's how she got to $1,900. Also, she said this was 4 years ago, so it seems kind of old to go to small claims on.
Mrs. Parr was my landlady.
That's your deceased mother?
Yes.
Okay.
I was breaking up with my husband. I do have receipts of all the rent was paid through May of that year. That was in 2011. So then I found I was getting evicted for lapse.
What does lapse mean?
Lapse meant no wrongdoing on my part, just that the 10-year lease was almost up and that they wanted to do something else, I guess, with the property. I went to the housing court, and he said, yes, indeed, that the place was not up to par.
What do you mean not up to
It didn't
par?
meet codes. For instance, I had a stove that hadn't worked. 2 burners hadn't worked in 5 years.
I'm sorry, what were you in housing for? Your lease was over. Like
No,
she didn't
no, it
leave?
wasn't.
There was no lease. It was a month-to-month agreement.
Oh, so then what's lapse mean? Just you were giving her the month?
It was lapse in the sense that,
Did she get a 1 month's notice and wouldn't leave?
yes,
Okay. So when did she get her 1 month's notice?
it would have been around May or June of 2000.
So why is she saying she had a 10-year lease?
She didn't have one.
You didn't have a
I was
10-year?
under the understanding that around 10 years we would be discussing.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay. A 10-year lease, it's not unheard of. I've never seen a 10-year lease. Though people do weird things. I would not give someone a 10-year lease. That's just me, though. What could have happened was maybe it was a friend of hers. Probably likely the man's mom was friends with her. And she said, yeah, you can rent this thing. And how 10 years came up, I don't know. Maybe she thought in 10 years she would have enough money to buy her own house. I don't know. But it's likely maybe it was a 1-year lease and then it turned into a month-to-month lease. Or maybe it was always a month-to-month lease. I would have strong doubts that there was a 10-year lease. But let's see what happens.
Did you have a lease or didn't you?
I thought that we did. It was
Then can I
verbal.
see it?
No, it was oral.
Oh, that's not a lease.
I hate oral leases. Don't do oral leases. I think by now people know not to do these things, but historically, landlords were just pretty chill folk. They just like, whatever, you want to live in my guest house? All right, like that's fine. No, that's not fine. I know I sound dramatic, but it's for a good reason. Have a written lease.
When it comes to property, it has to be in writing. And if it's not, and then by operation of law, what you have is a month to month.
Okay,
And so that means that you have the same limitations any other
Yes,
month
Your
to month
Honor.
has, which is they could just say you're out in 30 days. We don't like your face.
Yes.
Okay, they could say whatever they want. They don't have to give you a good reason. All right, so now you give her the months and she doesn't take it. And is your mom in the picture during this or not?
Oh, yes, my mother was completely in charge. I was helping her.
Okay. And so why did you want her out, or she want her out?
Mrs. Gilliland had a breakup with her then husband, and it was it got violent from time to time. I mean, there
Between Mrs. Gilliland and her husband?
yes, and you know the house where the rental apartment was is part of the main house. So actually, there's really just a wall and a door that separated the main house from Mrs. Gilliland's apartment. And so you could hear all the noise, you could hear the ruckus. The police kept coming because there was a lot of violent behavior going on. And
In fact, you got a restraining order against your husband?
I got a restraining order. He acted up in January. He was quite violent toward me. We got separated. I asked Mrs. Parr if I could still stay in the apartment once we were separated, and she said yes. We always had excellent rapport.
Would your husband come to the apartment afterwards?
He had, but then when I got the second restraining order, that was all done. And he
All right,
didn't.
so in any event, they've
And
decided they don't want this. They don't want this to be, they didn't pick your husband. They don't want to be a part of it, so whatever it is, you give
Well,
them
he
1 month's
wasn't-
notice. Why don't you leave when they give you the 1 month's notice?
Well, because I was, I paid May's rent, and I got the eviction
Oh, I
notice
don't
on May
expect you to
11th.
leave, right, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I got the eviction notice on May 11th. I just paid May's rent. I paid all the rent
And that was for you to leave when?
by the end of the month. I
Okay,
said,
I'm
well,
sorry,
I'll leave.
you're in Connecticut. What kind of notice did you give her?
Oh,
no
Connecticut.
Let me see it.
GoDaddy is a partner that always puts you
No,
first.
GoDaddy, no.
Start today at GoDaddy.com.
No, I don't want to start today.
What if feeding your dog fresh Whole Foods was easy?
Come on.
Sundays for
Okay, so you didn't leave in May, though.
No.
Okay,
I
so you
didn't.
got June,
I
so
went to
really,
the
you
housing-
weren't prejudiced by any of what you're about
No,
to
I
tell me
went-
anyway. So did you pay June?
No, because when I went to the housing court, he said, don't pay June, July, or August because
Why June, July, or
he
August?
said, because you're going to win the case. He said, basically, you're going to win the case because the place is not up to code and you've been dealing with that for 10 years. So,
Okay. This is very suspicious. If you go to a government agency, they don't just tell you to not pay your rent. That could get you evicted. They wouldn't tell you not to pay your rent. There would have to be some sort of notice, some sort of like government issued order to not pay. Other than that, someone just at a housing counter can't be like, don't pay your rent for several months out. No, that's not how that works.
or
They
don't
don't
pay it.
usually go in the business of telling you not to pay your rent.
Well,
They're not lawyers, they're
It
inspectors. They
turned
can
out
tell you.
he did grant me the extension through August 28th.
the agreement.
This is, by the way, this is in 20.
I have the agreement for
Hold
mediation.
on.
I'm
This is in
sorry.
2011?
Yeah.
And what was,
This is
essentially, what was the
certified
agreement?
That Mrs. Gilliland would vacate the apartment by August 28th of 2011
Without paying any rent?
without paying any rent. That's right.
Okay, and that was why, because was the place not supposed to be rented?
No, it was supposed to be rented, but
It could be rented,
my
but-
mother just wanted out of the arrangement.
Okay, so according to her, the reason why you couldn't collect rent is because it was an illegal apartment. That's not true?
No, that's not true. That was never brought up at the
Okay,
time.
and were there ever any citations or like did the inspectors write you guys up for anything?
No, not that I'm aware of. no.
Okay, where are you getting all that?
So, For 9 years, 9 months, everything was fine, and now all of a sudden, she's like not paying rent and she says things are wrong. Does that sound sketchy?
Sounds really sketchy.
She would have complained earlier.
Yeah, a long time ago.
Oh, okay. Going inside the courtroom.
You claim that
That does happen. It's very common. Keep in mind, housing's a very sensitive topic because the property owner has certain rights and the tenant has certain rights. And when you live in a house, in an apartment for a really long time, there's an attachment to that space. And so in that sense, I can understand it. It's quite a reality check or a shock to your system that you have to up and move. Moving is very involved. You've got to go look for places. You've got to submit rent applications. You've got to pack up your stuff. So like that I get. But at the end of the day, for the most part, when you own your property, you have, in theory, a lot more rights than the tenant does. So if the mom, who seems to be, probably older at this time, doesn't want this woman living in the house anymore and she has the right to end it, she ends it. What it seems like happens, and what happened here and so common that happens, is that tenants will then start scrambling to find ways to stay in the place either longer or in perpetuity or drag things out. So they'll go file complaints. They'll say there's all these things wrong, even though none of that was said before. It's definitely just a defense mechanism. So here, it doesn't look like there's any complaints. They weren't cited for anything. I find her initial comment that she was told by housing that she didn't have to pay rent for several months, not to pay that she would win a case, but there wasn't actually a case, so I'm not sure what she's even referring to. So that's suspicious. Then the defendant, who was the son of the then landlord, the landlady, he said that there was some sort of mediation and the mother had agreed, okay, she can stay through August and not pay any rent. So you can come to those kind of agreements. And so for those several months, I guess she didn't have to pay rent. So let's see now what happens.
I told you not to pay because there were all these. You got to not pay for the same age-old reason that tenants get to not pay, and that's that the court system takes 5 months to decide anything.
Well, now it's taking
That's why
4.5
I love
years.
when I hear judges out there. Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Judges out there talk about how these judge shows and they make judges look bad. No, they don't. America loves us, because we get it done. The people who hate the judges on their case are the ones who let the judges who let these things drag on forever and ever and ever. Works great for the tenant, though.
It's true.
Because the tenant then stays there, doesn't pay, and gets to stay there, and then until they have just exhausted the landlord so much that the landlord says, just go. Just go. Pick up your marbles and go.
That is,
and give
I don't
us
even
our
have
place
to
back so that we can get somebody in there who does pay rent.
I don't even have. That's exactly how it goes. That's exactly how that goes. The system, by and large, this is in Connecticut, I don't know. But in Los Angeles, there's a lot of cases. And judges can only hear so many cases a day. There's only so many judges, only so many departments. There's only so much staff. So these things get kicked all the time. And a lot of it ends up just being you waive the rent and you go, okay, move. That's not always a settlement. But by and large, the judge is right. That's exactly how these cases tend to resolve.
Okay. So this is resolved between you guys in 2011. Why are you here in 2016?
The second part of the housing thing was that he said to them, and they understood, and they had the lawyer sign at the bottom there, that because I lived there for so long, that I would be getting the interest on the escrow and the interest on the 10 years I lived there. And I had to
I'm
send
sorry,
back the
what
keys.
are you talking about? Interest on escrow of 10 years I lived there. What are you talking about?
This is what I was told at the housing.
Oh,
my
security?
deposit.
Thank you. I usually don't
I'm
like when
sorry.
people shout out, but now I understand. All right, so you're supposed to get security back?
Yes.
Says who? That's not in the agreement.
No, what you have to do is I follow these books like my Bible. They happen to come from the state of Connecticut.
No, wait. Listen to me.
Okay. Haha. So I'm getting ahead of the show, but I have a feeling what the judge is holding is like an eviction settlement agreement. And in there it probably says the tenant waives their right to the security deposit. The tenant doesn't get anything of a security deposit. and the owner gets to keep it. I don't know. We're about to find out, but I have a strong feeling that's what that says, and that's why the judge has a headache. What she's talking about, in some jurisdictions, there's interest that accumulates on a security deposit. Very, very, very minimal. Like, it's a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage of interest. So she's saying, I've read all of these books and I'm supposed to get interest. It's not a lot of money. It's typically like a few bucks. It's like not a crazy amount of money. Filing fees are going to be more money than what that interest calculation is. But if she doesn't get the security deposit and she's waived her right to it, there's no interest because she's waived the right to the security deposit. But let's see.
Let's take this back a step, okay? Let's forget that you settled the case with nobody owing anybody anything.
No.
Let's put that to a side.
I'm sorry, that's
show me
okay.
proof that you paid security, because I can't look at the lease to see what you paid because you don't have a lease. So show me proof that you paid security.
When they were told by the housing magistrate that day, do you understand that after she returns the keys and moves out on the 28th, leaves it in swept out condition, because I had just redone the place, she's entitled to ask you for her security deposit back. Request in writing on Form A, which I
Watch
use.
this. Did that happen?
No.
Okay.
I
Now
have
I
the
want you to
receipt.
listen. Okay, I need you to listen to me.
Okay, so I guess it was not in the agreement, but I can't see the agreement, so maybe it was in there, but from what the judge is saying, it's not in there. But the judge is saying it was an oral agreement, so where is it documented that you paid a security deposit? Let's find out, which this happens. This happens a lot, especially in situations where it's oral, you're helping a friend out, you're helping a family member out, it's month to month. Okay, just pay me $1,000, you can stay in the room. And then they were there for 10 years. And then one day the landlord goes, I'm not down with this. And then you have these disputes. But if there's no written lease, the written lease says on there, here's the rent, which is going to be the initial rent amount. Here's the security deposit. That's why you have a written lease, because it documents a lot of things. Who pays for what utilities, what the tenant's responsibilities are, how to terminate the lease, etc., etc., etc. But one of the important things on there, who's allowed to live there, how much they're going to pay for rent, and what the security deposit is. Those are three, and there's many important components, but those are three big ones specifically applicable here. And the judge is pointing out it's an oral agreement. So where is it that you paid a security deposit? And let's see if she did pay one.
Fine. I don't care what another judge said. I am deciding this case, but I am happy to decide it in your favor. I need you to do the threshold minimum amount required for you to do to even ask for your security back. We're going to put this on hold a moment. Prove to me you paid security. So just show me the receipt.
That I have not got. As I say, however, they did agree in court with that magistrate that yes, they would return the security
Watch
deposit.
this. Did you ever agree to return a security?
Absolutely.
That's it.
I don't have the security deposit, but they said in court, no. It doesn't matter what's said in court. That's why you have the agreement. That's why it's there. Do you know how many cases judges hear? There's so many. A typical judge like in LA, they have a docket of about 500 cases at any given time. They have a lot of cases. They're not going to remember all of it. That's why they go, you attorney, or you party, come to the agreement, write it out, sign it. They go over it in court. It gets stamped by the judge, and then you keep going. So the security deposit thing would have been handled the 4 years ago. But the judge here is saying, did you pay a security deposit? And out of all of the paperwork that she has there, the one thing she doesn't have is proof that she ever paid a security deposit. But she wants a security deposit. So now, if she has no proof she paid one, and the son's like, I know nothing about a security deposit, this guy wouldn't really know because his mom was the one who moved the lady in 15 years ago at this point, or 14 years ago. So she, out of all the paperwork, she doesn't have the security deposit. Probably because she didn't pay one, because I have a funny feeling she moved in there because she was friends with the mom.
Now, do you understand what court is? That's what court's about. You have to prove your case. You need to prove that you paid it, and then you need to persuade me that the settlement where he gives up something, you give up something, means that you don't have to give up something. Neither of which you can do. Verdict for the defendant.
Usually when you come into court,
Let's see what she has to
the
say.
judge likes to see proof of what you're suing for. And so what about this verdict you're against?
Well, I felt it in the housing court. It was implied and admitted by the landlady, Mrs. Barr, who's now deceased. She said, you mean we have to be...
Okay. This is when you play lawyer on your own. Implied and admitted. Two very different things. And admitted in a court of law has a very different meaning than what the layperson uses admitted for. So her first thing is implied. Well, it was implied I'd get my security deposit back. You have an agreement. That's what's in the air. So to say it was implied and admitted, well, which one is it? Implied is that you can infer that from a series of other statements. But it's not admitted. Then she's saying it was admitted. So then it wouldn't be implied. You wouldn't have to try to figure that out because it was already admitted. So that's like, no, just no.
The security deposit? So I followed suit. I did everything by the book.
Except you don't have any.
I don't know who the guy is next to her. I don't know if it's like her son or her boyfriend. He's just standing there, like hoping he looks good on camera. I can't breathe. Oh my God. He's just like, I was on TV. I showed up. I did my part as a supporting actor. Like, he had no lines, but he's just there. Oh my God.
Dance.
That would be 15 years ago, that one receipt, so.
Yeah, that's not the judge's fault or the
Right.
court's
of course
fault.
not.
So, is that the end of this?
Yes, it's the end of it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, there you go.
Oh my
All right,
goodness.
so step on in here and what light can you shed on this?
Well, I'm just pleased because, we had gone to mediation and mediation was all settled. I just wanted an end to it, and I'm very happy that Judge Millian ruled in our favor.
You think you've heard the end of Tressa here?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. I
Is
think
she a good tenant?
off and on. She wasn't the greatest tenant, but, it wasn't about her being a tenant. It was about my mother being afraid of having her in the same complex, in the same house, basically, and not knowing when the police would arrive, what would happen with a violent breakup.
Let's go to Harvey.
Okay, Kurt, if you live in a place that has substandard conditions that are really bad, you need to document it, and then you need to notify the landlord immediately.
Okay. So here we are in all of this. I have a tough time with a lot of things that happen in these videos, oftentimes with the tenants. If you're going to go to court, right, there's some judges that'll be like pretty chill and lenient with pro per. So pro per is when you represent yourself. In small claims, you're pro per, you represent yourself. Attorneys are not allowed in small claims. That's why you don't see attorneys in these courtrooms. But you have to have your documentation in a row. So if you are moving in an apartment, you should definitely have a lease. That can't be stressed enough. And the lease will say there's a security deposit. Take a photo of your security deposit check, take a scan of it. Landlords have tenant ledgers, get a copy of your tenant ledger if you can. Or if you wrote it by personal check, usually banks scan all the checks that get pulled out of your account. So save a proof that check was deposited, meaning it was pulled out of your bank account and that you paid your security deposit. You should have that check. And that's the one thing that killed her case, was that she didn't have the check. Because had she had that, the judge might have gone, okay, what happened with the security deposit? And it wasn't mentioned in the agreement. The reason why it's not mentioned in the agreement was because it was very unlikely that she paid one. And she had a very specific amount, a little over $1,900 that she wanted, but she had no written lease agreement and no proof that she paid that. Had she had the proof that she paid it though, I can't really tell, things might have gone her way. But one thing that I think why it swayed more so against her was that there was a settlement agreement where the security deposit was just not even brought up, and likely because there wasn't one. So if you are a landlord or a tenant, make sure you have a written lease. And if it's a security deposit and you're a tenant, make sure you retain proof of some kind that you pay the security deposit. Get a receipt from the landlord. Download the check scan from your bank when it's withdrawn. Save the, if you like Zealot, which is very common, save the proof of that transaction. Just something like that. Make sure you have proof of your security deposit. And come to court if you're going to dispute things with applicable paperwork. She had like the entire Connecticut code printed there. The judge could care less about that. A lot of the times in court, it's like not some, I mean, the judges kind of know the code. It's like you see, they hardly ever cite code. They don't cite cases, none of that. It's more like, you know, what makes the most sense in this situation. So I hope that was helpful. I was surprised. I mean, it was pretty like mellow. No one cut each other off, so that was good. And until the next one, thanks for stopping by. Oh, if you like this video, I have other ones, but also you should subscribe to my newsletter. I have a link below. I send out a weekly newsletter with a lot of very helpful and informative information, mostly towards landlords. I might or might not have a video about security deposits. If not, I think I might do one. But that being said, thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.